What's up, y'all? It's Shuffle. In today's video is going to talk about 3 teams that are very difficult to play in Darkest Dungeon. These are not the only 3 hard teams, but these are 3 of the hardest that I've encountered. So if you want to get some tips and all that, then stay tuned. Of course, as always, before we get started, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, leave your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure to check out the description box for all the cool stuff, like Discord, Twitter, Twitch, and Patreon. And then also we are launching a VOD channel for the Twitch stuff, which is also down below. Our first team is named Scoundrels. This is a creation of Thick Veiny Sausage. This is the team he took to Farmstead to get over 10,000 kills. And I would say that this is the hardest team I have ever played in this game. The team is comprised of Antiquarian, Houndmaster, Man-at-Arms, and then Occultist in terms of back to front. And this team is primarily a dodge team. For those of you who have watched my content in the past, I have said that Man-at-Arms is probably the hardest character to play just in general. He has a very difficult turn 1 in most cases. And then Houndmaster is a character that I routinely misplay, which gave birth to some memes. What makes this team pretty difficult to play, besides having people like Man-at-Arms and Houndmaster on it, is the fact that it doesn't have like traditional modes of play. Most people are probably comfortable running Houndmaster as a damage dealer, but since this team is so focused on defensive measures, you have to find ways to squeeze out extra damage from the other people. This means that Occultist specifically has some pretty difficult turns between deciding if he wants to use his awesome stun, or his heal, or using Sacrificial Stab or Marking. When I was first learning to use this team, I struggled a bit because I wanted to keep stunning with Occultist, but honestly you start running out of torches because there isn't a lot of damage to be found on this team. What makes Man-at-Arms difficult in this team is not only does he have his normal support stuff like Command and Guard, you have Riposte, which most people are probably used to, but you have to use Crush fairly frequently. Crush on its own is a pretty average move, but it can hit into rank 3, which is nice. So between Crush and Riposte, that's where Man-at-Arms contributes on damage. Antiquarian can chip in with damage either with Nervous Stab or Festering Vapors, while also boosting the entire team's dodge by spamming the dodge vapors. Houndmaster is also difficult to play because he has to contribute with his damage, since he's probably the best damage dealer on this team, and then he also has to act as the stress healer. For Endless Harvest specifically, this team has to find time to stall, which isn't too difficult because you can get your dodge to some really good levels between the trinkets and skills, but knowing when to do that and when to just put the foot on the gas to get all the damage is a bit hard to figure out. What specifically makes this team strong for Endless is because being able to dodge is a really great defensive plan. Dodge is just a broken mechanic in general, and then it relieves the burden from support units from having to heal you constantly because you're just not taking damage. If you want to play this outside of Endless Harvest, this team gets a little more difficult because you have to make some changes. For instance, you will likely want to run Flash Powder instead of Dodge Vapors on Antiquarian, just because the fights are much shorter, and Flash Powder gets you a bit more mileage for one hit. And then characters like Occultist and Man-at-Arms specifically are going to have to start doing a little more damage with Sacrificial Stab and Crush. For Endless, you still have to do these things, but it's not as much of an imperative because since the fights are going just continuously, all these buffs that you're stacking are just going to keep lasting, so you don't have to really push through fights as aggressively as you have to do if you're playing normally. And no matter what situation you do find yourself in, whether it be regular missions or Endless, remember that you do have 2 sources of mark on the team to get Houndmaster some boosted damage. And also to an extent, you can give everyone some boosted damage because Houndmaster's mark removes protection. Next, we'll stay with Antiquarian because I feel like people have trouble with this character. And the next team I'm going to talk about is Arbalest, Plague Doctor, Flagellants, and Antiquarian. Yes, you heard that right, Antiquarian is up front. If this is a bit too scary for you, then an alternate version would be Antiquarian, Plague Doctor, Houndmaster, and then Flagellant in terms of back to front. What I like about this team is that it is an Antiquarian team, but also it has Plague Doctor and Flagellant, which are 2 of the best characters to run together on a single team. Normally, some of the best Antiquarian teams have either just dodge spam all over the place, or it has someone like Highwayman to benefit from Protect Me and spamming Riposte. This team is a bit speed reliant because you want to make sure you can go first and get rid of the dangerous stress casters, since healing HP won't be as big of an issue. And then you have Antiquarian up front who can hit Protect Me on Flagellant to keep her safe and also enable his low HP buffs. This team does struggle a little bit with rank 1 damage, and it also is reliant on bleed damage, so if you're going somewhere like the Ruins, it'll be a bit harder to run. In a way, the Houndmaster variant would fix some of these issues. You trade a bit of healing output for more control because you have Blackjack to stun frontliners, as well as Target Whistle to remove protection from those frontliners, so even if you can't bleed them, you can still hit them for almost full damage. Although I guess you could run Noxious Blast instead of Incision if you're going somewhere that's bleed resistant. The primary reason I enjoy this team is just because you have Antiquarian up front, which is pretty fun, and then having her use Protect Me on Flagellant, who sometimes just doesn't like to get hit, so you don't get those low health moves and buffs. You get to enable those. And then you have a very heavy control style of play with the stuns and then the damage over time, which means you get to pick and choose who you want to take down and when you want to take them down. Then it also has the added benefit of being an Antiquarian team, so it gets you extra money, and I know that's one of the things I get a lot in my comments is what do I run Antiquarian with? Like what teams do I put her with because I need the money, but I'm not quite sure how to maximize her. Even though you might struggle a bit with rank 1 enemies just because you don't have the consistent damage or the stun capability, you do have a way to neutralize them otherwise. You can keep hitting them with Noxious Blast from Plague Doctor, which lowers their accuracy, and then you can hit them with Flash Powder as well, stacking this pretty high. So between those two moves, you can keep those really big threats like Bone General and Unclean Giant up to about minus 50 accuracy from just 2 debuffs at champion. And then suddenly you're a dodge team. At first it may seem like Houndmaster is probably the better play here, and he is really consistent and a bit easier to make work for this team, but if you want to run it the first way that I talked about with Antiquarian up front and then having Arbalest for instance, you can lower the accuracy of the remaining enemy to the point where they don't matter anymore, while also getting some other really good utility from Arbalest like Marching Plan and clearing all those various statuses with Rallying Flare. Plus Arbalest isn't as reliant on bleed damage as Houndmaster is, which means she does a bit better in the Cove. And the Ruins, I forgot to say that. The final team is going to be Crusader, Jester, Houndmaster, and Occultist. You could run Bounty Hunter over Houndmaster if you wanted to, but I feel like reach in rank 4 is kind of an issue, so I like Houndmaster a bit more. I like this team just because it's mechanically fun to play and it's got a few moving parts but also a lot of options. On turn 1, Jester's going to hit Battle Ballad, then use Holy Lance, and then after that you have this dance in the back of your party of Holy Lance and Dirk Stab. Then you have some stuns up front as well to help slow the fight down if you need to. This team is also pretty resistant to getting knocked out of position. It will mess up some of the stuff you're doing, but when it does happen, the team doesn't just entirely stall out because it can't do anything. It can still do things, it's just not its initial game plan. You have a dedicated healer in Occultist, and then you have some backup healing in Crusader, who also helps out with the stress healing alongside Jester. Since these units can pretty much function anywhere, this also opens you up to Finale on some of those bigger threats if you want to use Dark Stab to go into rank 2. Because of Jester's kit, you don't really have access to any damage over time, but with Marks, and especially Target Whistle or Bounty Hunter if you can use him too, you can lower the protection of enemies, which helps your direct damage get through. With the stuns up front, that means that Crusader and whoever else that needs to can contribute on healing or stress healing at the end of the fight as you stall out on the remaining enemy that isn't usually a big threat. The only core issue of this team is that it's really reliant on Battle Ballad, which is just the nature of most Jester teams just because he adds so much with one button. So if Jester gets moved out of position or he gets stunned on turn 1, then this can kind of feel like it stalls out, but that's the only time it does. When the fight is getting wrapped up, you can use Crusader to Holy Lance into rank 2, either by killing the rank 2 enemy or hitting a corpse or something like that, and from there you can spam Stunning Blow and your recovery moves. Overall, this may not be one of the best teams out there, I'm not claiming it is, but in terms of its complexity and your options and how fun it is, I definitely think it's worthy to be included in this list. Alright, well, that's going to do for this one. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, give it a thumbs up, leave your thoughts down below in the comments if you have some other team ideas that are pretty cool that we should be made aware of. And for future videos, I think I'm actually going to try and do the Farmstead Guide. I've come to accept the fact that I'm probably going to have to just miss out on some of the hero guides, so I think this is a nice consolation prize. Other than that, be on the lookout for the final tier list and some beer runs, stuff like that, other ideas that I come up with. Make sure to follow on Twitch and then check out the VOD channel that is also linked below when I start uploading there. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.